This is Take Flight with Mark Whittle.
I'm Mark Whittle, former city worker turned performance coach, and this is your place for inspiration and education on ways to optimize your performance. Thanks for choosing to take flight.
Matt, welcome to the Take Flight podcast, mate.
What's happening, man? Well, I'm so happy to be here.
Man, thanks for having us.
Dude, it's an honor, my friend.
You've absolutely sorted us out this morning, so we're sat in your living room now.
Yep, we're here. This is studio.
Had the smoothie.
You crushed the smoothie.
What's the secret recipe?
All right, there's a secret recipe. Mixed berries, frozen, spinach, water, some milk, Greek yogurt, protein powder, honey, cinnamon, some lion's mane, which is a mushroom adaptogen, peanut butter, and that's it. Mixed up all into that, just love and joyness, and it's all mixed in there, dog.
Man, it was insane. It was insane. Mate, firstly, your energy is infectious.
I appreciate that, bro.
Yeah, I'm sure you get that a lot.
I do. I appreciate you saying that. Mark, I didn't realize that about myself until I guess I started hanging around with other people and being around team environments and sporting environments where, you know, other people were not always like that. And then I saw it from just almost from my own lens of like, oh shit, not everyone is wired in this way, but it's good because everyone shouldn't be. And then it's nice to have people that are like that you can then maybe feed off of. And I get energy from other people as well. So it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, oh mate, absolutely, absolutely. How much do you think that has played in, I don't know if I want to call it like your success, but your ability to build an audience?
I think it's definitely played a role. I think that I'm not an expert in anything except really understanding myself and who I am as a human. And I think my ability to spread positivity and to spread that energy to other people is an attractive thing, right? And obviously when you think about social media, like people see things from a lens, right? They see it from a screen. But if you're able to be who you are through a screen, but then also do that in real life. When people see me in real life, Mark, and I'm sure you're now seeing it now, like they're like the best thing I hear is like, Matt, you're just like how you are in your videos. You're just like how you are on social. And even though I don't show everything on social media, I try to show up as my highest version as much as possible. And I also just show like that every day for humans that I know from my everyday life, you know?
Man, I get that 100%. That's how I felt. Like as soon as I saw you, like it was shouting from across the car park.
That's normal shit.
Yeah. But I love it, mate. We, both of us feel so welcome this morning, taking us on the run. We hit 4 miles this morning. Mm-hmm. It was a beautiful morning, showing me around, and then I was going to say cold dip, but it wasn't this morning, was it?
It wasn't too cold, but yeah, the Barton Springs, which anyone, if you're ever in Austin, Texas, like you got to come to Barton. Like it's worth the trip. I'm glad that I got to take you there because it's one of those staple Austin things to do that you should do when you're here. And it was fun that you got the full runner treatment, right? We went on a 4-mile run and you hopped into the springs after. That's how it goes around here.
Yeah, and look, I just want to say as well, congrats on everything because I've admired what you've done and built for yourself from afar. So to meet you today and to actually get to run with you, come and sit down with you in your place, like I'm having a great morning. So thanks, man, and congrats on it all.
Dude, thank you so much, bro. And I'm so glad we got to connect. And it's like I told you earlier, like anytime that you're able to collaborate and connect with other people, other creators, it's a powerful thing, right? I mean, anytime you can share ideas or just share experiences or stories or your journey in general, like we're doing right now, I think it's what the whole game is about. It's spreading that type of energy is good.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, you said something there. I want to just mention it because I'm 100% want to ask you about that. Mm-hmm. You said you're not an expert in anything, but you're very good at understanding yourself and who you are, right? Like that's such a huge part of what I do with my clients, and it's kind of what I spend my whole life trying to figure out as well. Mm-hmm. So I really want to dig into that. Before we do, I just want to talk a little bit more about like what's your week like, so people understand what you're doing day to day, what are your movements, and I guess not to put a label on it, but like the job.
Yeah, I operate obviously a media company. What I do is basically media. I see myself as a media company first, and then a creator, then an athlete, then a coach, a trainer, whatever you want to do, right? And that's kind of something I got from Gary Vee early on, where I was like, hold on, everyone should picture themselves as a media company first, and then their occupation. So early on, even when I was a personal trainer, most trainers just see themselves as trainers. I saw myself as a media company. So I said to myself, like, how do I get more clients? How do I show people what I do? It's by getting online, creating videos, just creating the exposure to allow people to potentially work with you, right? So to answer your question, I would label myself as a media company and a creator first. And what that looks like day to day or week to week is obviously opportunities like this to sit down and chop it up on a podcast. I love coming on other people's pods because it allows me to create content for myself, but also to give back my time to other people. In addition, I do a lot of filming, obviously. Now, what that filming consists of, I would say once, maybe twice a week, I meet up with a videographer and we film a long form YouTube video, and then we film 10 reels for the week. So then that whole week will basically be pushed out. Like if I didn't record any content on my own, I would have enough content to post on all the platforms for the whole week, right? But I'm also one of those humans that still records content. I still edit some of my own videos, right? I don't have just this big entire team that does all my work. I have help for sure, but I still do a lot of the work. So like in between the week, I'll still create my own content. I just posted a video of us running in the morning and doing things like that where, you know, the filler time in between, I still create a lot of content. And I think the other time is mixed in between doing business consulting, helping other brands and other creators do exactly what I've been able to do, but doing that from like a coaching perspective. And then I do a lot of brand partnerships, right? So during the week, I'll have meetings with my brands, talking about deliverables, talking about projects that are up and coming and things like that. So it becomes a lot more admin during the week. Like when people don't see me in front of the camera, I'm doing a lot more admin, business development work to continue to keep this boat afloat, right? Like you got to keep this thing alive. And obviously there's a lot of growth on my social, but just because you have a large following, it doesn't always directly correlate to money and compensation, right? You have to really work towards building those things on the business side. But I've noticed that a lot of creators, if they're not business savvy, they start to struggle when they get an audience and they don't know what to do with that audience. And that's kind of where I'm at too now, where it's like, all right, getting myself around the right people, the right business mind to also sharpen my tool set so I can better understand and better leverage what I've been able to create.
So good, man. I love it. The other thing that jumps out is this, like the way that you view yourself as a media company, like the Gary Vee thing, like it's amazing. But like, how do we get past our own, I suppose it's insecurity, right? To be able to allow ourselves to think of ourselves like that.
This is a great question. I think it starts with a level of self-awareness. What do you want to do in this world? Like what are you about? Like what interests do you have, right? Most people have the insecurity because they're still so afraid of the judgment that they're going to get if they put themselves out there. But at the end of the day, like as humans, we shouldn't care so much about the external judgment. We should only care about the internal judgment, how we see ourselves. The person you see in the mirror is the biggest battle. But everyone plays this game of trying to get approval from everyone else. And I think how you get out of that is you start to change your mindset around who you are really listening to. And I think if you start there, it starts to change your framework of like, why do I still care about the person in high school or my old college girlfriend or my old teammates, or why do I live by the opinions of other people? I think you have to start there and really ask yourself why that it matters so much to you, what someone else is gonna say if you post a video or if you start chasing after your passion. I think that is something that every human needs to internalize and ask themselves, why am I living my life based on other people's opinions and not my own? And that's something that's super deep, Mark. Like, I mean, I don't think that you can unravel that in just one conversation. I think that takes, days to weeks to months to really peel back that onion, to really ask yourself like, damn, am I living based on what I think I can do or what other people are saying and think that I can do in that sense?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I could talk about this stuff all day. There's a Nipsey Hussle quote which says, I'd rather be at peace with myself and at war with the world.
I love it, yep.
Than at war with myself and at peace with the world. And that's that ability to navigate the internal world versus the external world. And like you said, it's a definitions game really, isn't it? It's like, define who that person is you're prepared to listen to. So like, when did you start to realize was that a game you were playing? Were you listening to that and then you realized and then changed it? Or how did you figure
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, so I played college football. A lot of my identity as a human was caught up in being a football player. It's part of the reason I cheated through school. I just got by. I didn't really apply myself in other aspects outside of football, right? And when I got done with football, my whole goal was to play in the NFL. That never happened. So my last year, my senior year,
Where were you?
I was at Monmouth in New Jersey. It's a small Division I AA school. We had a couple guys that go to NFL from my school, but Not many. Like, it's a smaller school. It's not a Power 5 like Alabama, Notre Dame, all these big schools. But I haven't always had this mindset, Mark. And that's, I think, the beautiful part of this journey and my journey is that anyone can change and anyone can adapt if they want to. But that latter part, you really need to want to change. So many people, they want to read the secret sauce of 60-day ad program, 60-day to grow my content, all this stuff. It's always that quick fix. The real secret is the work. It's staying disciplined. It's doing things over and over and over, even when you're not seeing a result. To answer your question, when I was working that corporate America job, I worked there for 1.5 years. It was a sales job. And I just didn't enjoy what I was doing. I just was filling the boxes of what I was supposed to do post-college, right? Get a job, start figuring your life out. You should have an idea of what you want to do. Who the hell knows at 23, 24 what they really want to do? You're still learning about who you are and what you're trying to achieve in this world, right? And at that moment, Mark, I was starting to self-educate myself and starting to be a practitioner in what I was trying to become, right? And at that point, I had no idea what self-improvement was. I had no idea what personal finance was. I had no idea about a lot of things. So what did I do? I just started immersing myself and start educating myself around topics that I wasn't so comfortable in, starting with the personal finance. If most people can't ever leave their job because they don't have management under their own finances, which then restricts them into having that job because they have to pay bills. So for me, it started there. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Then that helped me understand like, oh shit, if I'm always in this employee mindset, how the hell can I get out of the rat race? And you can't. You're always going to be on that hamster wheel because even with inflation, even when you get your little bit of a raise at the end of the year, it's not enough for you to still continue to live. So it started with self-improvement there. And then I listened to guys like Gary Vee, guys like Jesse Itzler, guys like Tom Bilyeu. And I was downloading new software. Our minds are just like software, right? People want this new quick fix. Well, that's why you people read books or listen to a podcast, because you're downloading new software. I always tell them, like, if you just change what you're listening to and change the environment that you're in, watch what happens. And that's been my journey, dude. When I was working that corporate job, I felt like I was trying to become an entrepreneur, but I was still working the 9 to 5. But I was on my off hours, just like with AJ this morning, right? What are you doing when you're not working the 9 to 5 is the question. And those hours, I was filling it with education, with stimulation in my mind, and just kind of challenging myself with things that were outside of my norm.
I relate so much, especially like that moment you talked about. Well, firstly, college, right? You said you didn't apply yourself to the studies and stuff. I was exactly the same. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that was necessarily, but didn't really try particularly hard. Did the bare minimum to get past. I got B's like just across the board and like just focus on sport. Mm-hmm. I still don't really necessarily know what that is, but fuck, it hits you in the face when you step into the real world, right? And realize that's just not something you can do. What was that transitional period from corporate America? You did 1.5 years in sales. To get out of that, what was this is the kind of surface level, if you like, take flight approach. Is this like step out of the thing that you don't like into something else that you're more passionate about? What was that journey for you?
A lot of humility. I was living in Baltimore at the time, in Maryland, with a couple of roommates. First thing I did was move back to my mom's house. And at 25, not many people want to just go live back at their parents' house, right? That reset. And that's what I had to do, because I realized, I'm like, all right, well, if I'm going to leave a salary job, it would be nice to have a lot less fixed expenses, right? So something where my mom could help me out. I could live there for free for a couple months and then start paying her some form of rent at least, right? But the transition happened with one, moving back home. Then it was getting back into the personal training space. So that's what I did first before I created content. And once again, of media company first, I was a trainer, but I was making videos every single day.
How did you know from like leaving sales that that's what you wanted to do? Did you know before you were like, did you hand your notice in and go, I quit? Like, what was that?
Yeah. So this position I had was a 2-year manager in training position. So they throw you in operations, in sales, in like transportation, which is basically like the low level, like service job, right? So you're in the truck with the truck driver and all these things. At the end of this 2 years, you have an option to either go through management or go to sales. I wanted to do sales, but my upper management wanted me to stay and do operations and do management because that's where they saw my value. So they were starting to almost like dictate what I wanted, like what I was trying to do with my career. When I saw that, I was like, hold on, I would rather die on my own sword than die on someone else's. So I ended up just putting my 2 weeks in. I'm like, all right, I'm done working. I was like, I loved the experience. I had got to travel. I got to do a lot of things through that corporate job. Honestly, a lot of what I've learned in the corporate lens that I saw was through that job. And the biggest lesson I think I got was because I had to work with low-level employees all the way to C-suite, the saying of treat the janitor how you would the CEO really stuck with me, like just through that job. Because literally 1 week I would be in a truck. I would be in a truck with a driver, and we would be servicing all the companies that we work with. And then the next week I would be sitting in Chicago with all the VPs and C-suite people. And that parallel, to be able to treat the person that's a driver and the person that's the president with the same level of respect, is something that most people can't do. Because everyone puts the president on a pedestal. Everyone puts Joe Rogan on a pedestal. Everyone puts these people that they admire or they want to be like on a pedestal. But to your point earlier of my energy, I give people the same level of energy. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you came from. I don't care what your status or your job is. I just show up as me because that's what I can control. I can't control if someone likes me or not, if someone respects me or not. That's just who I am as a human. And even through this job, I wasn't maximizing my full potential. And that feeling, once again, just like in college of cheating through school and not really applying myself, I felt like I was in that same rut. And that's really what was like the tipping point for me to say, you know what? This isn't the best environment for me to kind of elevate myself.
It's so good to hear, man. It's similar to myself. Like it's like a crisis of autonomy. The moment you realize someone else has decisions that they can make about your life, you're like, wait a minute, like, nah, this is not how I want things to be. I think also interesting, like, you know, the ability to do the janitor and the CEO with bring the same energy and treat them the same way. If you don't do that, if you're valuing the C-suite more than anybody else, then you're in a status game. Mm-hmm. And that is when you're pulled into the external, what we're talking about, that external war. Like that's what people get stuck into, and then they place value on the wrong things. Okay, man, so fascinating. I love it. I didn't realize how close that was to my story of leaving corporate. So that's really interesting. So talk to me, like, so you go on the fitness journey then. When, like, maybe if we go down like a route of the tipping points, any tipping points for you when you started to see some type of external success with this new journey outside of corporate?
Shit, Mark, it took a while.
Did it? Yeah.
I always tell people, bro, I mean, I made videos for 2 years before anyone really watched my shit, bro. And some people are gonna sit here and say, or that's listening, they're gonna be like, 2 years is not that long. And some people are gonna say, you did that shit for 2 years? Some people don't make content consistently for 30 days, let alone 2 years, right? It was interesting. The tipping point happened when I started getting into things outside of my comfort once again. And I think that's why I'm so gung-ho about leaning into discomfort. A lot of this happened through COVID for me. So peeling back, right? I left corporate America. I started personal training. I started creating content. A lot of what I was doing was around football. I was training like high school, college football players because that's what I knew. Right? I was familiar with that. I knew that I didn't have the expertise in biomechanics and having a certification as a trainer, but I played 10 plus years of football. It's just who I am. It's what I know. And it was a strength of mine. So
what position were you?
I played receiver and quarterback.
Sick.
Yeah. So I leaned into that. I started training people and athletes in my local area because I went to high school there. So I had a level of clout and people knew my name. And I basically leveraged that and the connections in the local area. A lot of what I've been able to do was learning from people that were smarter than me. And that's been like a secret sauce that I think anyone should understand. Like, you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with. If you hang out with just straight bums and people that are complacent, then that's gonna be you. If you hang out with people that are overachieving, that are striving for greatness, that you're gonna be the next one up as well. And that's just what I was doing. I was surrounding myself with people that were trying to be great. And it's interesting to see now where I'm at and other people that I used to look up to. Not that I've passed them, because it's all just a subjective game of what you deem as success anyways. But the tipping point happened when I started to get into running. And running happened for me when lockdown happened. All the gyms got shut down. I got laid off as a trainer. So I was starting back at ground zero again. I was on unemployment. I was trying to figure it out, living at home. I'm like, holy shit. I can't work out. I can't necessarily see people in person anymore. What the fuck am I gonna do? So I leaned into myself again. So I'm like, all right, you know what? The Murph workout. You guys know the Murph workout? It's he's an American soldier. He died in the Operation Red Wings, which is, there's a movie called Lone Survivor. Yes. Yeah. So Mike Murphy, the lieutenant, It's named after him. It's a 1 mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and another mile. And you could do it broken up, right? So you would break up the push-ups, pull-ups, and squats. But I did that 30 days in a row. At the end of the month, I accumulated 60 miles of base building. That was my start of just running in general. And I say that story because those challenges are really what started to get me out of my comfort, because I had to be creative and figure out a different way to make content, because I couldn't just go meet people and do football drills and exercises anymore. I had to lean into myself. And I did that 30 days in a row. And I got a little bit of traction. Some people were like, this guy's fucking crazy doing 30 Murphs, 30 days. And as I kind of kept going with different challenges, and I further got into running, I was reading Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And I just was like, you know what? Let me go run 3 miles. Let me go try to run 5, and then 6, and then 8, and then half marathon. And I just kept trying to challenge myself little by little. The video that really popped off, and I'm getting into your question, I went to the Philadelphia Marathon, and I did that mile split thing, like you said, right? Mile 1, 650, mile 2, whatever. I did that for 26 miles. And Complex DM'd me, and they were like, Matt, do you mind if we repost that video on our page, on Complex's page? I was like, first of all, I wasn't even following Complex. It was in my like hidden DM. So I was like, oh shit. I was like, yes. I was like, repost it, go for it. Instantly, they posted that video, hit like 2 million views on Instagram. At that time, I had maybe 4,000 followers on Instagram. In 48 hours, I got to 8,000 followers. Like literally just by Complex posting that video, instantly my Instagram started to grow very fast. And at this point, I already had like maybe 150,000 followers on TikTok. A lot of my audience was grown on TikTok first. So I guess maybe that's the first answer to the question was I went crazy on TikTok. When Gary Vee was preaching, get on TikTok, get on TikTok, get on TikTok. And at first, I wasn't listening. As much Gary Vee as I listened to, I wasn't listening at first because I was just like everyone else and I wanted to win on Instagram. Everyone wants to win on Instagram because it's social proof, it's social currency. But right now, everyone wants to win on TikTok. And everything changes because as time goes, every platform gets older. Facebook started with college kids and now it's freaking our parents. My mom uses Facebook, right? And Instagram's the same way. Instagram's getting older and all the older people don't want to get on TikTok because they think it's young. But now in 2022, 38 to 50-year-olds were the largest demographic that went onto TikTok. So the platform's getting older. So to answer your question, I think there was 2 tipping points. One, TikTok was just a win for me. I was posting 5 videos a day just to test.
Just organic growth to 100 and what?
I've never done any paid ads on any of my social media besides sponsored posts through brands. But besides that, every post I've done has always been organic.
But the TikTok growth to like 100 and whatever thousand was just consistency.
Organic, just organic.
Yeah, I love it, man.
3 to 5 videos a day.
And the Philadelphia Marathon, what gave you the idea to do that split post? If people haven't seen it, do you want to explain what it is?
Yeah, it's basically what it is I do like an intro like, yo, we're running the 2021 Philadelphia Marathon, and every single mile I just say out my split that I got, right? And at that time it was like mile 1, 7:05, mile 2, 7:10, mile 3, and down the list for 26 miles. The reason that I think it's so interesting for people is that my facial expression from mile 1 to 26 is not like, it's pretty much the same, which is interesting that it's like, it doesn't look like I'm getting tired. And where I got the idea from is a couple places. No one's ever done it in that way of like mile and then split, right? Like that exact thing. But my buddy Hella, I saw Hella do like, he'll just do like mile 1 and he'll just go like this into the screen and then pop up the split on the screen as text. And I've seen other runners do similar things, not every mile, but every like couple miles. So I just thought of the idea of like, what if I just literally made a clip every single mile just to get people engaged with me and see how I'm feeling from the start to the finish. And then now I'm kind of known for it, and like I do it at every race and people are like, what the
It's so good, like mile 8.
Exactly. I say it pretty eagerly and like it's a fun thing now that I've kind of like made my own.
Yeah, but listen, man, like the story is incredible, but what jumps out at me is something that's so simple, but we don't do. And I'm so guilty of it. I'm still not properly on TikTok because I'm trying to win on Instagram. And you listened. You listened to the Gary Vee advice. You got on TikTok. You did it. You were consistent. You made the content. You listened and it worked. Like, that's the biggest compliment I can give you, is that you actually went out there, you sought out advice from books, from listening to people, and then you did it. It's amazing.
I appreciate that. And, you know, something I always say, so many people read and listen to books and they watch YouTube videos and they do all these things. But we as humans learn best by doing and by failing and by learning. And if you never actually do it, if you never put yourself out there to fail, then you're always going to be in your head of like, oh, I think I know what I can do, or I think I know what I need to do. But then you never actually go do it to then reap the rewards of it. And to your point, Mark, like it's literally, I'm like, once you start to get the base level of education of whatever niche or industry or topic that you're interested in, at some point you need to take a level of action, because that's where the true growth is happening. To put yourself out there, to be vulnerable for love and admiration in addition to hate and negativity, that's where you're gonna really learn about, one, is this the right thing for me? And two, does this shit really work? Once that popped for me, once TikTok popped for me, I knew Gary was right. And I knew he was right all the hours before I listened to him. But it's to exactly what you said. Sometimes the way you hear it, at the moment that you hear it, it rings the bell, the light bulb goes off, and then you're like, oh shit, let me change my trajectory here. Let me change my strategy. And that's kind of what happened.
What is it that stops people listening, do you think?
I think it's a fear of potentially doing the thing. Right? And I think it comes back to the judgment as well, right? Because at that point, right, TikTok was branded as these young kids that are just dancing. So who wants to be known as the guy that's on TikTok, right? Like it's just, I think there's a level of judgment that people don't want to deal with, because it's not the platform where it was getting as much love and praise at that time. So in terms of what stops people from actually doing though, I think it's all in between your own ears. I think some people don't think that they're worthy of actually building something that's meaningful or doing something that they're passionate about. They don't think that they're worthy to actually live their life and design the life that they want to live, because we've never been programmed this way. We've been taught to just be employees, to be students our whole lives. No one tells you to go be an entrepreneur. So of course it's new. Now, how does someone break out of that mindset? They need to be super intentional, and they need to have a level of ambition that overcomes the fear of the judgment. If your ambition is stronger than the judgment that you're gonna get, then you're gonna at least attempt it. And then from there, how big you wanna grow it is up to you. But it's actually very common, and I understand exactly why most people don't do it. It is scary. Mark, sitting where I sit now and sitting where we sit, it is scary because you're vulnerable for judgment. And if your approval comes from other people's opinion, then you're fucked. For me, even when I do stupid shit, even when the stuff that happened to me at Houston, I had a little bit of controversy that happened to me at the Houston Marathon where I was getting some negative feedback and some negative backlash. It did not enter my framework because I know that my intent was not coming from a negative place. I know that I was just going to that race to just run my race, not to go qualify for someone else. So if you are clear about what you're trying to do in this earth, the opinions of other people, good or bad, should not change your framework. And I think the most thing that I was proud about myself about all of that was I wasn't too hard on myself, because I knew that I was coming from the right place and I wasn't trying to cheat the system or run for someone else. So I think, to answer your question, I think you need to have a high understanding of who you are and what you're trying to do so that you can deal and overcome with the adversity and the failures that are gonna happen in life.
Superb. I love what you said as well. Like when the ambition outweighs the fear or outweighs your fear of what other people are gonna think, like you're going to do it. So I'm assuming that's what happened to you with the TikTok thing, right? It's like, I finally listened because the ambition outweighed the fear of doing the thing. My dad always says a quote to me as well, which is linked to what you said at the end there, which is, as long as what you're doing is in good faith, you're good. Like you saying, like you know, it's coming from a good place internally. So you can be happy with yourself. You can be at peace with yourself, right?
I couldn't agree more. I think also something that I've just like really learned through this content creating process is that no matter who you are, you can't please everyone, and you shouldn't try to. Exactly what your dad told you. As long as your intent is good, period, that's it. That's all that fucking matters. Because everyone in this world, they're always gonna spin it in some way. Literally, Mr. Beast donated a bunch of money to get people that were blind to fix their sight. And people were shitting on him that, oh my God, you're just trying to make money off of these people's things. I'm like, the thought that someone has the audacity to think that that comes from a negative light, that they're just trying to benefit off money to showcase their story, it's ludicrous.
It only says more about them, right?
1000%, Mark. And it just shows you that you could be doing the dopest shit in the world. Elon Musk, trying to change the world, trying to change the way that innovation happens and technology happens, and people still shit on them. No matter who you are, how big or small, there's always gonna be someone that has something to say. And as long as you don't let that change who you are and what you're trying to do, then you're good. But you got to build a mindset that's strong enough to deal with that, because you put yourself out there long enough and there's always gonna be some backlash.
Yeah, 100%, man. Mate, I'm getting a good idea of who you are, man. I love it. I love it, man. It's inspiring stuff. I'm interested to know, like, what do we need to know about your upbringing to know more about your makeup and who you are?
Adversity.
Okay.
I was actually talking about this at dinner yesterday, and the conversation was similar to this about, like, how do you create more people that have this mindset? And when you create friction and when you have adversity in your life, you're able to better deal and cope with things. And that's been my life as a kid. I had parents that got divorced when I was super young. I always grew up with a single parent mom. Seeing my mom hustle and grind multiple jobs to put food on the table, to put a roof over me and my older brother's head, I saw grit and I saw work ethic from a young age. My mom never had to tell me what grit or what hard work was. I just saw it. So for me, a lot of my childhood has formed me into who I am today. I believe that people that go through adversity, just like a LeBron James, just like athletes that came from households that were very uncontrolled, they end up creating a chip on their shoulder. They have a mindset that's unbreakable because they've seen the worst. You have a kid that's been spoon-fed everything his whole life, that grew up in Beverly Hills with a white picket fence, with a 6-car garage. Like, what adversity is that kid going through? And it's not that you give that kid less, it's no like comparison, but it's just like, if you think about that picture, the kid that's wondering about where the next meal is coming from is going through a different level of stress than the kid that has to deal with, oh, do I get Nikes or Under Armours? So I think adversity is a powerful thing, and the more you can lean into it and use it as a strength and not a weakness, and that right there, I think, is the game. Gary Vee says it all the time. Growing up in Queens with 9 family members in 1-bedroom apartment, that creates grit. That creates perspective and gratitude for what you have. So many people in this world, they're so unhappy because they look at what other people have and they're comparing it. I don't have a Bugatti. I don't have a G-Wagon. If you just look at what you have, that shit changes the game. For me, people are like, I want to be bigger for sure, but I know that there's people that look at me and they want to be exactly where I'm at, and that's their dream. So who am I to complain about what I have, right? Like, I go super, I lean into gratitude at any moments where I feel like I'm down and out. I'm like, yo, I live in a 2-bedroom apartment. I have clean drinking water. Like, what am I really complaining about? And that's why I'm able to show up with such a positive mindset, because so many people wish that they could sit in my shoes. Even though I have ambition to do more, people wish that they can be where I'm at. So I'm like, shit. It leans, and I say that to say, as a kid, my mom put a lot of self-esteem, and she showed us to just appreciate the small things, because as kids, me and my brother didn't get all the things. Like, we didn't get all the game systems and all the newest stuff. I got hand-me-downs all the times, and it's just one of those things where you lean into the gratitude aspect, because what else do you have?
Oh man, it's so good. I think everyone can benefit from that. Like, it's too easy to not be grateful for what we have, and again, it's the external game, isn't it? Mm-hmm. What else in your childhood is like, there's a really interesting thing that Tony Robbins said once. I think it was on the Tim Ferriss podcast. He said, like, if you could only ask somebody one question, what would it be? Right? He was like, man, I would never ask someone one question. But he said, if I was limited, I think he said there'd be 2, right? So he was like, the first thing he'd ask is, who did you love more? Or whose love did you crave more as a kid, your mum or your dad? And then, so you say whoever that is, and then who did you have to be for them? So who did you have to be for that person?
I craved my mom's love as a kid more, because I always felt like my mom had always like kind of loved my brother a little bit more. Only in the sense of, my mom and my brother are much more similar. They think alike, and growing up, obviously, being the older brother my brother was, he had to kind of be a male role model for me, kind of a father figure, and almost like a husband figure for my mom, having to really be like that figure that is kind of like a rock in that sense in the household. And I feel like when I was growing up, I was like, I just craved to get the attention from my mom when I didn't always feel like I had it. And it's an interesting thing now as I've kind of gotten more mature and in certain aspects of my life, maybe more mature than my brother has. And it's almost flipped now where me and my mom are super close because she sees the maturity in me and how much growth that there's been. But it's also just my mindset of how I approach life and how I see the world in that sense, right? And it's interesting how like me and her have gotten closer, and now her and my brother kind of, you know, Asian parents always have an expectation for their kids, especially their oldest one. And that friction has now almost separated their relationship, where it's an interesting dynamic where how time can change those things, right? But me and my dad are very similar in terms of the way that we approach life and just how we do a lot of things. I think I look like my mom more, but I act like my dad. But it's a healthy balance because I act like my dad. My mom can relate with me more because she can vent to me. She can complain about the things that she's going on in her life, because with her and my brother, they're just the same person that it collides. But I'm a different energy. I listen a lot more than I speak, even though I'm very extroverted. And in podcast cases, I talk a lot more. But in most times, I'm actually a lot more introverted than people think. And that's like something that most people don't know about me. But to answer your question, I think I craved my mom's attention as a kid more. And I think now I'm learning that I also want my dad's attention, because who doesn't want their dad in their life? My dad never came to a lot of my games. He didn't come to watch me graduate. He didn't do a lot of things because it was awkward for him to have my mom's whole side of the family around these gatherings and these events. So he'd rather just choose not to show up. That shit hurts. It's not a great feeling to not have your dad there at a state championship game, at your first college game, to watch you walk across the graduation. Like, that shit's not a good feeling. I understand like where he's coming from in that sense of like, it just doesn't feel as comfortable for him when he's around ex-in-laws. Not because, you know what I'm saying? Like who wants to be around that environment? So I understand, but I also have a level of empathy where I could work on my Korean to better build that relationship. There's a language barrier, right? I don't speak as fluent Korean. My dad's a lot more traditional. My mom's way more Western cultured, way more Americanized. So in moments like that, Mark, I always look internal for myself. Like, it's easy to point the finger. It's easy to say, like, I wish I had my dad in my life. I wish I had a better situation growing up, but like, what can you do about it now? And I always tell my brother this, like, as kids, as younger people, we have more control to change. Parents, they can still change. It's just a little bit tougher, right? You can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I think the challenge is always like, control what you can. I can control my behavior and the things that I do to help build relationships with other people. My dad example, I think it's a great example. Like, I can complain about how my dad doesn't know English, but what is that doing? I should just then go learn Korean to then build that relationship. You know what I'm saying? Where I feel like the world, it's so easy to just be like, oh my God, this person doesn't do this person do this. Like, then what are you doing about it? And I think if more people thought in that fashion, the world would be a much better place and a more happier place because you're in control.
How old are you, Matt?
I'm 27.
27, man. You're so aware. It's incredible.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really amazing to hear that mindset and that perspective. You've obviously done your work, so props for that, man.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So how much is that? And thank you for sharing that, by the way. I really appreciate that. How much has that driven you and contributed to your success? Do you think, like, either the awareness of that or just the fact that it even just happened?
I think it's been substantial. I think that a lot of my childhood, a lot of, you know, the adversity that I went through as a kid has formed me into exactly who I am right now. And obviously along the way, the high level of education I've gotten from certain entrepreneurs, certain business people, certain monks, certain preachers, whoever it is, right? You can gain inspiration from a lot of people. I've now basically like taken all of that knowledge and almost spun it into how it works for me. And a lot of that, like the grit, the hard work, the discipline, these things I almost learned through football and through sports. And entrepreneurship is the biggest game of, it's the biggest sport you can play because there's no cap, there's no timeline. Like, you can play this forever. And I think a lot of who I am now is because I went through that adversity. I went through those struggles. And I think the biggest thing though is you have to be intentional with changing. It doesn't happen overnight. I didn't just become this person because I read one book, right? You have to do that stuff every day and put it into practice, and small things compound over time. It's just like investing. You put $1 in a day in the S&P market, like at some point you'll be a millionaire at some point if you do it every single day. Yeah. And that's just how I feel about doing things that are out of my comfort. Cold showers, reading, journaling, things that I hated to do, things that, Mark, I would not even imagine doing 3 to 5 years ago that I do every single day, and I can't fathom not doing it.
Like what?
In the morning, I do the Wim Hof method every day before I brush my teeth.
What, 3 rounds?
3 rounds, Wim Hof. I do 100 push-ups.
Every day?
Every day. I have a red light in there that I've recently started to use more. And then right after that, I read 1 page of the Daily Stoic.
I see your Daily Stoic post.
And then I've recently started doing the 5-minute journal where I just write down 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 things that would make it a great day, and then 1 affirmation.
How do you maintain the discipline?
I think by creating a routine. I think by creating no friction. Everything I just listed to you, it's literally right on the floor of my bedroom right here. And every single day in the morning, before I touch my phone, before I go into the world of social media, before I go into the world of anyone else, I spend 10 minutes on myself, 10 to 15 minutes for myself. And that little intentional time before the world starts is for me to just set the foundation of how I want my day to go. And that, in terms of how do I actually make it a practice, is like creating no friction for yourself. Every single day in the morning, it's all right there. Like all the things I just said are right on the floor right there where it's just ready to go. Now, how do you build that routine when you're traveling and when you're doing other things? It gets a little bit tougher. And I think what I would tell someone is just don't judge yourself. If you miss a day, don't beat yourself up. So many humans beat themselves up, and it stops them from achieving the things that they want because they're like, oh my God, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't fast enough. I didn't hit my splits. Dude, the fact that you showed up, you should praise yourself. People need to rewire their brain to then give them more flowers to themselves. Not enough people do that shit. And not enough people are doing that in the world where you're just telling someone like, yo, I love what you're doing. You're doing dope shit. Keep going. There's not enough of that because like we said earlier, everyone's trying to compete against each other versus trying to praise and lift people up. And for me, I just want to lift people up.
Yeah, and you're doing that, mate.
I appreciate it.
I'd love to hear like if there are any mentors in your life. Like, mate, the similarities are ridiculous. I see you got the Zig Ziglar quotes in there. You dropped the Jim Rohn, you know, average of the 5 people. You're talking Daily Stoic, you know, Gary Vee stuff.
Yeah.
Who are the biggest mentors that have had the largest impact?
Gary Vee, by far, is one of my biggest mentors, and I've only met him a couple times.
You've met him a couple of times?
I've met him a few times, and it's been very spontaneous, and I think some of the biggest mentors don't have to be necessarily like people that you always are talking to all the time, right? Sometimes the biggest mentors that have impacted my life, some of them I've just seen through a screen or read their book. Yeah. And I think there's so much power in that because if you actually are a human that's willing to take action, shit, you can find mentors anywhere, right? I think Gary Vee has changed my mindset around business and marketing. And what he's done for my emotional intelligence is something that, to sit here at 27, to have the level of framework that I do, it comes from learning from people that are very high level EQ people. He's definitely one that has changed my framework. David Goggins, on a physical, on a hardening, on a callousing mindset and like understanding what the human potential it can do and what it can be, has changed me forever, bro. I would not be sitting where I am if David Goggins, if I never read his book, if I'm being honest. Like that, what it's done for me through the running lens and what running has done for me in my life is something that I can't even put into words, honestly. Even when I'm sitting with Chris, sometimes recording those shots of like, you know, how running's impacted my life, sometimes I'm not as comfortable talking right into the camera. I'd rather be talking to a human because it just feels more real to me. And like what Goggins has been able to do, and he gets so much hate because he's a former SEAL and he does all his message could be very tough. But it's a powerful message, and I think for most people, if you take even a sliver of it, it can go a very long way. Other entrepreneurs, I think, you know, Jesse Itzler is someone who I also just really look up to in how he does business, how he does life, like how he is as a father, how he is as a husband, how he shows up as a friend, like all of those things where it's multifaceted. It's more than him just being a really good entrepreneur. He's good and he shows up in every aspect of his life. And I want to be the same way. Like at some point when I become a father and when I become a husband, all those things, like I want to be just as good at that as I am at what I do right now. And I think that stuff I get super inspired from. I think some mentors that I actually have like been impacted in my actual day-to-day life. There's 2 guys that I've recently been connected with, Choi and Brian Lee, who are both Korean Americans. They're big in the media space, and they've just showed me how to better navigate in this space. even when this shit happened at the Houston Marathon, I leaned into them and they really gave me some good insight on how to deal with this adversity, deal with this quote unquote negative backlash. And they're the ones that quickly told me like, Matt, this is good. As long as you see this as a good thing, then you're winning, because any PR is good PR, if it's good or bad. And they helped me kind of come up with that script of like, own it, apologize, be clear about what happened and why you made this mistake, and then move on from there. And their advice hits so well. My buddy Brian has a big understanding of media. He's been in the media space for a while. And he was like, Matt, what you just did is what Procter & Gamble, it's what Apple, their crisis management team, their PR team has to deal with when something bad happens. As a creator, all you need to do is make a video and just own it, and boom, it's kind of settled. And there's power in that, because the power of being a creator is that you own your audience, you own your distribution. So there's no middleman, right? I don't have to go through NBC or CBS or AB. You know what I'm saying? I could just directly go right to my community. And there's power in that because there's no friction. So those would be some people that have really impacted my life. And there's more. I'm literally there's more people for sure. Like Jay Shetty's another guy. But like there's so many people I've learned from, and it's because I've been a lifelong learner and I've dedicated myself to continue to learn. Because Mark, for a long time, I wasn't learning about shit.
Yeah. Mate, it's so funny because I'm like you, like it's almost the sense of feeling like we need to catch up, right? Where we sort of let it slide a little bit. Like, and also, you can tell a lot about a man, about his bookshelf. I see you got like Jim Quick Limitless in there.
I love Jim Quick.
The 12 and a half, Gary Vee one, right? That's the soft skills one, which is what you were alluding to. I see you got the Endure, Alex Hutchison. And the other Endure, the Cameron Haynes. Man, I see you're reading. And also, you know, what comes to mind is the Viktor Frankl quote, which is suffering ceases to be suffering the moment you give it a meaning. So the Houston Marathon example, like context, essentially you got somebody else's place in the marathon, right?
I signed up late for the race. So I've reached out to other runner friends that I knew that were going to the race. Someone wasn't going to be there because they had an injury. And I basically ran under that name. I tried to transfer it, but the race doesn't allow it. And I qualified for the Boston Marathon under someone else's name. And that's why it became a heightened thing.
It's something that happens all the time, as far as I'm aware, right? I know people that have done it loads, but it's because you then qualified for the Boston Marathon and then it became an issue. Yeah,
and obviously I have a following. I make a ton of content, and I'm an easy target in that sense. But I think if I ran a 3:01, which is not a qualifying time, it probably wouldn't have been as big of a news.
What did you run?
2:59.
Oh, sick.
So it cut off like right at the cutoff time.
Sick though. That's amazing. What's your best time?
2:57:35.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So I was a little bit off.
Yeah. No, amazing though. Okay. Something that's like a fairly consistent thing is for those who are successful. And again, you said a great thing earlier around, okay, how do you even define that success, right? But those who are striving to achieve great things, let's say, they have a compelling future. And often you've mentioned in this conversation around like the vision, you want to be bigger, you want to do these things. And you're telling me on the run about a goal of yours that I'd love to explore a little bit with you.
I love it.
If you're happy to share.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think that as an entrepreneur, like you need to balance the level of ambition that someone might have and also being content with what you have, right? It's kind of leaning into the gratitude. I have so much ambition for what I want to do, but like Mark, when I tell you I'm so fucking happy to be alive every day. Every day I show up and I'm willing for it to be my last day on some real shit. And I think by living in that present moment while still like seeing yourself in the clouds, it's what that clouds and dirt is what that signifies, right? Living in the dirt, living in the present, and doing as much as you can, as much as humanly possible in the current state, while having this ambition to go do bigger and better things to impact the world at a grander scale. That's totally how I live my everyday life. To answer now your second question, the challenge I want to do in this year, something where for me, like being Korean American, I haven't been back to Korea, bro, in 20 years. I was 7 years old the last time I went to Korea. There's a trail in Korea called the Four Rivers Trail. It's 394 miles long. It starts at the borderline of North and South Korea, and it goes through all the rice farms. It goes through the main city, Seoul, and it goes all the way down through South Korea. 394 miles. It's a bike trail. I want to be the first Korean American to go run it. And what it would be is 15 marathons in 15 days would cover 375 miles. So it would cover that entire distance. The goal would be more than just the running, Mark, is that I want to just share my story and help inspire other Asian Americans and immigrants to get a better understanding of where they came from. I think when we live in Western culture, when you live in the United States, this is the best country in the world. It is. It's amazing. But sometimes you get lost into this culture and you forget where you came from. And I think for me, culture is so important. Like, I don't want my kids to not know what the Korean culture is because of how whitewashed I am, right? Like, they should still understand where they came from. And I want to do a better job of doing that for myself. So the challenge itself, 15 marathons in 15 days, like, yes, it's a physical feat, but even more so, it's about the connections and the humans that we get to interact with when we go do this. And right now, this idea is just pixie dust. It's just in the air. I'm manifesting it. There's nothing set in stone. There's not a date that I'm doing this. None of that is planned. I'm just the type of human that I manifest almost everything that's come into my life, whether it's people, whether it's business, whether it's connections. Like, it's always been that just a thought. And I always live in the unknown. I don't always have the answers, but I live in that space. It's why I've been able to do some crazy physical challenges, because I don't think that you have to be like, no one is completely prepared A to Z for life, for anything that we do. Like, there's always a level of doubt that we have to play in, because if you had all the answers, then you wouldn't want to do it anyways. Before I ran my first marathon, I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know if I can execute it, right? Same thing with my 50-mile race or 100-mile race. You never think that you're fully ready, but that's half the battle. You showing up, you attempting it, is the game of life. So many people play on the sidelines because they want the answers. They want the business plan. They want all the things set in stone before they start taking action. I've just been a human that's just taking action first and figuring the shit out along the way. And then it leads me into doing things like in Houston, where I kind of bend the rules a little bit, but I'd rather die on my own sword once again than do it based on what someone else is saying, you know? But that's kind of the challenge.
I look forward to seeing it, man.
I'm excited for it too, bro.
I know it's going to happen. But also, like, you know, we were talking on the run about how there's a deeper meaning to this, right? Like, the feeling or the sense of some sort of shame, which we all carry in childhood. I have to assume I had it, I know for sure, like some sort of shame about something you feel like you need to hide in order to fit in. And you spoke about that, like we were laughing about the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but
of course, no, I think, dude, you're spot on. And I've talked about this in the past of, like, as kids, you want to fit in, because as kids, we have that mindset of like, oh my God, I want to be around the cliques, the cool kids. I want to sit at the cool lunch table and all those things. And I remember at times, my mom wouldn't make me traditional meals as much, like, but when my grandma would live with me, in Vegas at the time, she would make more traditional Korean dishes for lunch, and she would pack it and I would go eat that for lunch. And I would always remember being a little bit nervous and apprehensive about, like, oh my God, what are the other kids gonna think about? Like, my meal is different. It's gonna smell a little bit different. It's gonna look different, because, like, in Korean culture, first of all, they eat way healthier. Like, even their kids, like, the packed lunches are like on levels of food that most Americans can't even fathom, like that you're gonna get at like a restaurant, but they eat these for lunch because it's just, that's the culture. Like, they don't eat as much processed stuff. Like, you're not eating chicken nuggets and fries. Like that's the Western diet, right? It's like, oh, pizza, and then you get like, it's just not the healthiest stuff. So I was always a little bit embarrassed and ashamed of it. And it's so interesting because now I'm so freaking proud to bring my friends to Korean barbecue, to bring them and show them more things about my culture. So it's such an interesting thing how that pivot happens in our own brain. And once you start realizing that your culture and the fact that you're different is such a bonus, it's a plus. And as long as you see that in that fashion, then you won't be so ashamed about it. And it's interesting, not until you mature a little bit more that you see that there's actually a positive in it.
Yeah, bro, like your culture, your scars, your wounds, your goods, your bads, like all of that stuff is a good thing. Can we talk about recovery?
Please.
I know we're just flipping straight from like the, the deep and meaningful bit into like a tangible, but I started running again properly like a couple of months ago. It's hard, man. It's hard on the legs. Like,
it is.
Put in like probably 3 runs a week in. I know you were saying before, like how you're on the floor, like always stretching and stuff. You're running every day, training every day, pretty much.
Almost every day.
Nearly. So what's a recovery? What is your recovery routine, and what would you recommend for others in order to maintain consistent practice of exercise?
Yeah, this is fun because me and Chris filmed a video on this recently.
Oh, nice.
It's a mixture. It's like a dual approach, a mixture of myofascial release, soft tissue work, and doing a lot of end range mobility. So what some people think of mobility and flexibility, they're two different things really. Flexibility is kind of like, you know, people think of it like static stretching, right? Like, all right, I'm gonna go touch my toe and just stretch out my hamstring, hold it for 30 seconds and do the other leg. Where in mobility, like you're trying to almost open up end ranges, right? Like whether you're in hip flexion or extension, like in a couch stretch, trying to like create different angles. Because if you think about it, running is a very repetitive sport. It's a repetitive activity. And you're going in the same plane of motion. You're just moving forward. And if you're able to lengthen at your hip flexor, at your knee, at your ankle, even just a centimeter, that centimeter over 26 miles is the difference between running a 4-minute PR, 5-minute PR. It's the smallest details in running that make the biggest difference because you're doing such a repetitive thing. So that's why I think mobility is just an important thing. So kind of to piggyback there, soft tissue, foam rolling, myofascial release, you know, using lacrosse balls to really roll out the muscles that are getting utilized a lot in running, calves, hamstrings, glutes, quads, really rolling that stuff out. It's the best form of massage therapy that you're gonna get without paying a high ticket dollar. I think that stuff is something that someone listening to this can tactically do. You can stretch more, you can do more mobility, and you can roll out more to feel better. In terms of actual sleep and nutrition, which I think are the best forms of recovery, that's what someone should focus on first. If you're a young cat right now and you only sleep 4 or 5 hours and you're able to still go on runs and work out and still do other things because you're young and you have energy, watch what happens in a couple years when you don't still feel that same way. So I think maximizing sleep is something that's super important. I've been wearing the Oura Ring recently. I was formerly wearing the Whoop just so I can track my data and track my sleep better because I haven't always been a great sleeper.
What do you prefer, the Oura Ring or the Whoop Band?
I honestly prefer I like both. I'm getting used to wearing a ring. I'm just not a ring guy. So it's still somewhat foreign to me.
I'm married, I don't even wear a ring.
Exactly. So I'm like, it's annoying because when I work out and shit, it just gets in the way.
Yeah, I'm about to get one of these though.
It's nice though. I mean, it's a cool thing. I mean, both of them give really good data. You can't go wrong. The Whoop is just a wearable, so it's just like a band thing that you can just put on your wrist. But both of them are really freaking good. I think anything that can give you more information about your sleep to better improve it is always going to be a good thing anyways. And most people aren't sleeping enough. So it's one of those things where at least getting data, even watches like the Coros watches or Garmin's give you information about your sleep. So maybe you start there because it can do a dual thing of being a runner, it could track your runs and track your sleep. But yeah, I would say sleep and nutrition is something that you should prioritize. Like you should put good fuel in your body so that you can repair yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, man.
Of course.
Amazing. We're going to do some of those on Sunday at Collective.
Yes, we'll get a lot of that in.
Amazing.
We'll get a lot of that in.
So last one, I mentioned just before we clicked record.
Yeah.
Again, I hesitate to use this word as a high achiever, right? I used to really love the fact that someone would say, you're a high achiever. And then I started to go like, no, I actually don't like that phrase because the things that I used to do in order to be that were really bad behaviors actually.
Fair.
So I guess just like for the ambitious or the go-getters amongst us like yourself, right? Who have the discipline, they do the practices, you know, you've got your morning routine, you're out there doing your bits, you're working, you're grafting, you're creating content, you're having success. You said you don't have many vices. Like myself, I don't drink. I haven't drank since lockdown.
Yeah.
Not that I don't like drinking, I just know I can't do it right now, like with a kid and stuff, like
Fair.
it just doesn't work.
Fair.
So I was just really fascinated to learn a little bit more about one of your vices and how that plays into your life, how it benefits you, and then how you tie that into your like athlete lifestyle.
I love it. No, I love this. And it's actually one of the first times I've actually like spoken about it on like a pod setting. I'm a big fan of cannabis. I've been a fan of consuming THC and CBD even throughout college. It helped me a lot through dealing with injuries, dealing with anxiety, dealing with just mental state in that sense. I'm not a big fan of utilizing pills. I don't take ibuprofen for anything. I don't take allergy medicine. I take I don't take many pills at all. I'm a believer that things that come from the earth, things that come from soil and from the ground, just like mushrooms, just like cannabis, it's things that are not as harmful as people think. To your point, every human has their own vice. I'm not a big drinker. I never have been. I don't mind taking a couple drinks here and there, but I just don't enjoy how I feel after. When I use cannabis or use weed just in general, I feel at a state that's more relaxing, a state that I'm able to wind down. And it's like what we talked about earlier. Like, it's so easy for me to be on all the time because I don't know how to separate work and what's pleasure and what's chill, right? So using cannabis is always more of a night routine for me. It's how I switch my brain from thinking that I need to be on all the time to kind of get into this mode of relaxation and kind of like calmness in that sense, right? And I think for any human, like, you know, it might not be cannabis, it might be drinking an herbal tea, who knows? But I think finding that separation point where when you're on all the time, it starts to then burn out as well. And if you don't have that ability to then separate what's work and what's pleasure and all those things, then you're gonna find yourself kind of being burnt out. So for me, it was always that mode of like, one, it kind of sets me into my nightcap routine and it allows me to kind of get into that relaxed state. And it's been something that, it's funny, people are always like, they are shocked. People are shocked when they hear that I'm a runner and I do all these, and they're like, dude, does this impact your lungs? Like, how do you keep running? And I'm like, it's not impacting your lungs as much as you think. It's all a psychology thing. At the end of the day, like, obviously, smoking anything is probably not the best for your lungs, but there's no tobacco in it, right? If you're smoking just flower, and it's not as harmful on your actual lungs. Like, there's not many people that have died from overuse of marijuana, right? But how many people every single day die from tobacco use? So it's a different game. But it's also something that I understand I could stop right now. I'm not connected to it in that sense where I feel like, oh my God, I can't live without like weed, right? It's like I could literally stop right now and be clean for however long I need to. And I've done it many times where it's almost a battle for myself, a test to myself. Like, I don't need it. It's just I enjoy it. Yeah. And it's one of those things where I think in life more people should do things that they enjoy.
Yeah, oh, for sure. It helps you put it down, like all the thoughts of work and the growth and all that. It helps you put
so much of that, man. And it's a mixture of, and sometimes I get my most creative thoughts when I'm quote unquote after I smoke or after I use cannabis. And it's one of those things where it puts my mind in a different place. And same thing with mushrooms, bro. I've tested more psilocybin since I've lived in Austin than I ever have, bro.
In like a microdose, or
in a microdose way. And I've macrodose, but I typically on every Monday I'll microdose. In the morning after I go run, I'll put a little tincture into my tea, mix it with honey, and I'll put lion's mane in my tea, and I'll start my morning like that.
You didn't put it in our smoothie, did you?
No, not today. Not today. No psilocybin today. But no, I think it's you know, I'm a very curious person. And when there's new science, when there's new technology, when there's new things that are existing, that are coming out, I'm always very aware and I want to learn more about it. And like I said earlier, I'm the type of human that I learn best by doing. I'm a practitioner in everything that I do. So before I make a judgment, before I make an opinion on something, I need to at least try it. And that's what I've done with everything, with drinking, with smoking, with mushrooms, with most things that I've ever done in my life. And I think more people need to have that framework because it's easy to sit on the sideline and say, oh my God, that guy's a pothead, he's a loser. When in reality, is that actually true? Or is that just this framework that we've created because the war on drugs says that marijuana and mushrooms are these negative things? People have created this framework in their own mind without actually practicing it for themselves in that sense.
Yeah. Question everything.
Question everything, Mark.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. Man, thanks for that. I think that's so interesting because even the people listening along to this, they might be having some of those thoughts of judgment and stuff. And you know, 10 years from now, this might seem like such a stupid conversation because
I guarantee it will be.
Knows what it's doing.
And to your point, Mark, like, I've always had these thoughts of like, when I first got into entrepreneurship, I remember one of my old business partners, we used to like have like creative sessions after, like while we smoked. And we would always say like, imagine we could post this right now. Imagine how much like, how accepting it would be if we posted this right now. But to your point, in 5, 10, 15 years, who knows? That's just going to be another thing where, I mean, shit, we see it now. Joe Rogan smokes with Elon Musk. Yeah. It's no issue. Yeah. Joe Rogan is like, right? And he's at the top of the game. So it just shows you that, shit, if Joe Rogan is taking a couple puffs of marijuana and he's also drinking and doing these other things, like, every human needs to work on themselves and figure out what works for them instead of judging what other people are doing. And if you do that, then you're in a place where you're at peace. Yeah, too right, man. What a perfect way to end the conversation. Man, it's a pleasure, bro. Thank you, mate. What an amazing morning I've had. I'm so glad that you guys came, man. It was super fun. It was great, man. Really enjoyed it. And I'd love to make Sunday work if we can. So it's not even a question. Okay, awesome, man. Awesome. And thanks for having us. Dude, of course. Mate, you're a legend. Good luck with everything. Thank you so much, my friend. Yeah, awesome. We'll stay in touch, man. This is not going to be the last hurrah. Oh, hell no. Hell no. All right, man. Legend. Thanks, mate. You have reached your destination. Hey, it's Mark Whittle.
Thanks so much for watching or listening. It's so great to have you a part of the Take Flight movement. Subscribe to the podcast on all platforms, video and audio, to be the first to see new episodes and new conversations with the greatest minds in the world. Follow me at markwhittle_TF on all social platforms, and visit takeflightworld.com to join our growing community of hustlers, performers, and go-getters. I can't wait to see you next time. Until then, stay positive, stay motivated, and of course, take flight.